So today I want to talk about a topic that is in the news and on everyone's mind today, which is the election of the president. And it's more than about time that we really looked at this process to see how it should be done. Because you have to be more than delusional to accept that only two candidates that are the choices of our two political parties can be considered to be the president. That they do all this other stuff behind the scenes to pick the two best candidates for us to consider. And we have to, because if you can't understand that it's impossible for a third party candidate to even win a state to get those electoral college votes. I mean, it's impossible. I think the last person who got any electoral college votes by winning states was George Wallace. I think it was maybe, I don't know if it was the 68 or the 70 election. But it didn't change the outcome of the election. So this fits right in the category of being able to recognize that you have a problem before you can fix it. Right now, we don't think we have a problem, which is the problem. So let's talk about the president. And that's another thing entirely too, is that we have so bastardized our the roles and responsibilities of our governing officials that they don't even know what they're supposed to even be doing. What are we electing them for? It's because that's the first thing that you have to be able to do, is you have to be able to identify and vet candidates to be considered. Okay? If I'm hiring, as a hiring manager, a senior level executive or employee, I have a job description that must be met. Must. And then HR solicits resumes and candidates from headhunters, and there may be 2,000 resumes for one job. And what's the role of the HR at that point? The role of HR at that point is to reduce those 2,000 resumes to the maybe 5 that the hiring managers want to invite in for face-to-face interviews that they can consider to determine their choice for that position. So there might be 2,000 resumes. And that has to be narrowed down. Today they use a keyword search where they match up keywords in the job description to keywords in a person's resume. And that's how they start making the first cuts. And then once they get a certain number, then they start looking at the details of the resumes to see if they actually have the direct experience that's required for the job. Okay? So even before we can talk about how to, which one we want to hire, we have to get our job description right, because nobody understands what the vice president's job is. No one. Just no one. They're making it up as they go along. They said that the current president, the vice presidency, Walter Mondale came up with this idea of what the duties and for the vice president would be. Because they, to be quite frank, they think that the vice president serves under the president, and they do not serve under the president. Not. They are in the legislative branch. Well, I don't even want to say branch, because there are not 3 branches of government. There's an executive department, there's a judicial department, and there's a legislative department. The only branches are in the legislative department. We have 2 separate branches. We have the House and the Senate, which are 2 branches of the Confederated Republic, which is a confederation of republics. And we'll get to that in a minute. And then we have another separation into branches between the unicameral Senate and the bicameral Confederated Republic, where the bicameral Confederated Republic is responsible for making laws that manage how the states interact with each other when they have to make domestic decisions that rise to the level of collective interest to the states, and to make the rules for how they will interact with each other that actually maintain the union. That's done through laws. Okay? When it comes to the Senate in a unicameral configuration, that's only for acting as the union. The bicameral legislature forms and maintains the union. The unicameral Senate acts as the union. Okay? To do what? To make the decisions of a free and independent state with the full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do, see that to do part, that's an action, and to do all other acts and things that a independent state may by right do. Okay? That is what they do through treaties. Okay? Because treaties are agreements. They're like contracts. Even an alliance is a contract. It's a participation versus compliance agreement with another country. Okay? Just like our Constitution and the Articles of Confederation are participation versus compliance agreements between the states. To do what? Establish the benefits, privileges, rights of participation in decision making, and cost of membership in the union. Okay? It's the same thing for an alliance. We will have requirements for how we participate with the other country or entity in an alliance. Same way with commerce. We can't, a company like Tesla can't just make a an agreement with a foreign country. No, the states agreed that only the states as a union can make treaties for commerce with foreign nations. Okay? There's a whole list of things in the Articles of Confederation that determine what can be done in the unicameral legislature through treaties, and what can be done through the bicameral legislature through laws. Okay, just as long as you're on. Okay, but the reason why this discussion is important to electing the president is where the office of the president originated. Okay? And how they must be chosen going forward. Article 9 of the Articles of Confederation established the president. Okay? Through the Committee of the States, which was one representative per state that would sit in recess of the whole Congress. Okay? With the full power of the whole Congress. Why? Because it's a democracy. And each state only gets one vote anyway. Okay? One vote. Under the Articles of Confederation, their delegation had to be at least 2 and no more than 7. But when they determined the question, each state only got 1 vote. Why? Because it's a democracy. All the states are assembled as equals with equal suffrage to reach a majority consensus. Okay? And when you have a democracy, that means that they all have to participate as equals at all time in every aspect of that resulting government. All the states. Not just donate representatives for the 2 parties to use as they wish. No. Each state has equal suffrage in the Senate at all times. Article 5 of the Constitution of the United States says that, establishes that. It says, and no state shall be denied their equal suffrage in the Senate without their consent. How do they consent to not having their equal suffrage in the Senate? They have to not have both of their senators present, because they need both of their senators present for the state to be present to form the quorum. When it was under the Articles of Confederation, they needed 9 states with at least 2 representatives. That's how they calculate that. That's what that 2 to 7 was about. In order to form a quorum, if a state showed up with 1, they would not be counted towards the quorum. Today, you still need 2 in the Senate to be counted as present. That means that 26 states, since it's only a majority today, 26 states must have at least 2 senators present to be counted as present toward the quorum to operate the Senate as a legislative assembly, which means that they have to participate in all aspects of making decisions, which includes identifying and ranking choices that they then vote on to determine their choice. Okay? This is the same way they have to do it today. Okay, then they chose one of the representatives to be president, to preside over the Committee of the States, as long as no person acted as president more than 1 year in any 3 consecutive years. And that was on top of the term limit for the representatives in general, which was no more than 3 years in any 6 consecutive years. Okay? So this is where we have to start to look at how to elect the president, because each state has a right to have one of their representatives or their citizens considered to be the president. Okay? How many can they have considered? Well, in a strictly democratic assembly, every state would have a fixed number, like 5 or 3, that they had to choose from their own states to be considered. But when they switched to a Republican form of government, now they could give each state a number equal to the whole number of senators and representatives each state is entitled in the Congress. And we'll get into that too in the next video. Okay, how do you calculate the number of electors each state is entitled? But they have to make a list. Now, one of those votes that each elector has, and they have 2 votes, has to be for a person that does not reside within their own state. Because if they didn't put that in, the larger states like California would only vote for persons in their own state, and they would dominate the list. Okay? And they would always have a Californian as a president. Okay? So, this equal participation is the keystone to democracy and Republican forms of government. The keystone. Without equal participation and equal suffrage, you do not have a democracy or a republic. And like I said, you have to have, every state has a right to have at least one of their citizens considered by the other states for the office of president. Okay? It has to be a consensus choice. And we'll develop more on that in the next video, but for right now, that is the important thing. We have a country of 340 million people. 200 million people meet the requirements for holding office of president. 200 million at least of the 340. I would say maybe even more than 200 million. And you're going to tell me that we have to choose between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris when the Democrats and Republicans are only 24% of the people together? What about the other 76% of the people? Why can't they have their choices considered too? Why do we have to consider the choices of those parties? And I'll leave you with that.